Welcome back to Trauma Lens Care, or TLC, and video 5, which is a continuation from the ACEs video, video 4, and this one is called Resiliency. And I would say I have really good resiliency because I have been home with my kids for over a week while they're on break. And so that's required a lot of resiliency on my part, I think. So we're glad you're here with us today, and we just hope that you take some hope and some tools home with you, or in your home with you, from this video.
Yeah, we want to reference way back video 1. We talked about red brain and green brain, and so we go all the way back to that conversation that about how so many things in utero and how many things in those first formative years change the structure, the architecture, and the functioning of a child's brain. And so what we want to establish is that resiliency, this idea of resiliency and what that means for a child. Resiliency is the ability to adapt and to bounce back and to overcome really hard things. And so children are not born with this ability. None of us are born with the inherent ability to be resilient. Resiliency is downloaded to us from our caregivers, from our parents, or whoever loved us and cared for us. They instilled in us through the process of attachment and bonding and through serve and return and through all those green brain connections, gave us the ability to grow our window of tolerance to the point where we could handle stress and handle decent amounts of stress and then be able to bounce back from those things so that when challenging things happen, they didn't become traumatic. But children are just not born with that. So even if you were bringing home a foster child from the hospital on day 1, right after they were born, that separation from mom, the fact that they're not with the mom, the person who carried them for all those months, there's going to be some issues just from that. So, or whether you're even working with a high school student who's seen years and years in and out of different foster homes, they all are going to have their own resilience factors built in from whatever happened to them when they were young.
So one of the things that when we talk about resiliency, I can look back as a foster parent and, like Darren said in a previous video, see where the mistakes were made that I wish I could go back in time and fix. Probably the worst mistake that I made as a foster parent, I don't like to share, but I want to share because I feel like it's super important in understanding scary behaviors in kids. The scarier the behavior, or the worse the behavior that a child demonstrates, the more scared they are. And so I think it's really important to start from that premise. Understand that scared children do really scary things. And if we don't step in and help, then they become hurt adults who actually hurt people. And so we had a little boy in our home. He was 5 years old. He was with us for a little over a year, and he really struggled the first few months. He hoarded food. He lied all the time. He destroyed things. We would find destroyed property all the time. And there was this moment that I felt like was kind of a hockey stick moment for me in understanding how to better handle and relate to kids. He came down the stairs from his bedroom and he was covered in feces. And the smell rolled off of him. And my first visceral response was, I seriously, even as a nurse, I wanted to vomit. It smelled so bad. And I looked at him and I ran up the stairs to his room, and he had covered the walls and the bed and the carpet with feces. And instantly, I was so angry. I was just angry. And I pounded back down the stairs and I stood over him and I said, "What is wrong with you?" And it's almost like time stood still, because in that moment, he didn't answer me, but his eyes answered me. And his eyes said to me, I've been neglected, I've been abandoned, I've been horrifically physically abused, and now I'm in a foster home. And I feel like what I'm covered in. And understanding that our kids do these things because they're screaming out for help, I think is the first step in understanding how to help them. And this little boy, over this time of a year, we got a lot better in handling him and understanding his hurt and his pain. And we started downloading resiliency into him. And we did this by meeting every need and by doing the same thing over and over again each day. And always responding in a way that was saying, we care about you, we're bigger than this pain, we see the value in you. And this was how we were able to start building a green brain in a child who was truly a red brain, and probably the most red brain kid we had in our home. And so we started following through, and we were the adults that always did what we said we were going to do. And so when we talk about resiliency, yes, it is built early on, but it can also be built in later. And that's how kids overcome things. And so by the time he left our home, he was a completely different child. He was actually a joyful child. He had calmed down. He was functioning in kindergarten. He was functioning in our family. He wasn't smearing poop anymore. He wasn't hoarding food anymore. He wasn't destroying property anymore. And that's because we started that cycle, that serve and return cycle that we talked about. We started building that in his brain, even at the age of 5.
Yeah, and he was a really challenging boy. We had a lot of those. But what was really amazing was we saw over and over again, and why I think that fostering is such a powerful thing is because you get to see kids heal, and you get to see kids come from really hard places and then begin to blossom and come out of that pain and all of that trauma and then heal. And so that young man, as well as many others, like ACEs tell us a lot, but it is absolutely not a life sentence. It does not define who you will be or who you are, but ACEs will help us to understand behaviors, but resiliency can overcome ACEs. There are a lot of really successful people that have high ACEs. They have had someone pour into their life and give them the ability to overcome the hard things that they experience. And so one thing that I think is really important to remember is that everything we are supposed to know about how humans work, about how humanity functions, about all these things, all of the things we're supposed to know is supposed to be learned in the context of loving, caring, stable relationships. And so if they didn't get that when they were younger at some point in that, but they can get that in your home, you can, it takes a lot of work, but you can fill in those gaps and you can help those children develop resiliency. And I think our role as foster parents, one of the things that we always felt was our role was that to be the punching bag for these kids, to take on all of their emotions and all of that baggage and all the hurt and the pain that they had. And because we should be able to handle it. We signed up for this. We have regulatory systems. We have green brains, hopefully, like we can handle their hard issues. And if we can take that on, that's part of the healing process for them. And so then hopefully at some point, biologic parents are back in the picture and they get themselves healthy and there's a reunification in the picture, that child has come through all of those issues and the pain. And now there can be a successful reunification because we took on, as the foster parents, we took on that pain. And that's what makes it really, really tough to be a foster parent and to continue to do it, because you will always be the punching bag and always have to take on a lot of that pain. But that's how we can help with resiliency in our foster children.
And I think it's important to recognize that relationships are the agent of change. And so for that little boy, when I looked at him and I said, "What's wrong with you?" Basically, I should have known that his behavior was a manifestation of all the pain and the hurt and all the things that had happened to him. And so at that point, I changed my parenting of him and realized, like, wow, you must be hurting so much to have done this. Let's clean this up together. And I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to put on the screen it's a resiliency quiz, because it's important to understand that you might have a high ACE score or a child in your home might have a high ACE score or a red brain, but the resiliency quiz that you're going to go through is going to tell you, and you're going to be able to have some conversations about, okay, what does a caring adult look like? Or I have a high ACEs score, but I had resiliency downloaded into me by an incredible mother and extended family unit. And so we're going to pull the resiliency quiz up, and there's not a score that you receive on this. It's actually something you're just supposed to be reading and having conversation about.
Yeah, the ACEs study was done as a scientific study, and there's lots of hard data that goes with that. This is not the same. The resiliency quiz was developed to counterbalance the ACEs thing and to try to see, well, why is it that some people can overcome trauma and hard things and some people can't? So here's the resiliency quiz. You can go through it, you can pause the video and answer each of the questions, and hopefully we'll learn something about ourselves.
So hopefully you've gotten some information from the resiliency quiz, and just understanding that a red brain or a high ACE score does not define who we are as people. Who defines us as people are the relationships. And again, relationships are the agents of change in our kids and even in ourselves.
Yeah, and you got to remember as a foster parent that you are in this for the long game. Our goal is to provide a future for these kids that's much more positive than it is now, right? So who knows what the future is going to look like, but we do know that the long game is where we've got to stay focused. It's really hard in the day-to-day, but what we got to focus on is 5 years from now, what do we want this child to be able to do, to handle, to what's he going to be like? And so that's what we just got to, you got to make it through the drudgery of the day-to-day hard things, but with the end in mind that eventually this child can be healed, hopefully, and is going to come out of this, and you will be the potentially the one relationship in that child's life that will change everything about their future.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will hopefully see you in video 6.